Saturday morning cartoons were awesome. From the 1960s through the 1990s, we kicked off each weekend in a frenzy of animation that is unmatched today.
But were these shows actually any good? Join us as we dig into the history of your favorite and not so favorite Saturday morning cartoons, look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of each one, and determine if our nostalgia matches the reality when it comes to these tunes.
So stay in your PJs, grab a bowl of cereal, and settle in. I'm John.
And I'm Robert.
And this is Toon Talk.
So John,
Yeah,
I gotta check. Did you unpack your adjectives?
I did. It wasn't as fun as conjunction junction.
Make sure you leave a little elbow room, and we'll make this thing happen.
And that's a verb. That's what's happening.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
Something a little bit different this time.
Right. This is a little different for us, but it's the 50th anniversary of Schoolhouse Rock, which debuted in 1973. So I thought we should give this one a whirl.
Yeah, only perfect, only fitting, and yeah, this is a fun one to dig into.
It was, because I remember these clearly from my childhood.
It definitely, like I said, something different than it's these short, quick segments, and
Right.
It's all about the music.
The music is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and I know you love it because you'd be jazzed about it, right? Because there's a lot of jazz music in this.
Yeah, well, I mean, how well? I mean, you just said you remember. How well do you remember? Like as you're watching through these again, like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh, I could sing along with a lot of them. I'm like, oh, I remember this one.
Yeah.
And I have these visions where I saw the animation, like, oh, that's why I remember that. It was in that thing, like Interplanet Janet. I'm like, I remember what she looked like, but I couldn't remember the context. And
sure.
I saw it. I'm like, oh. That's where that rocket hair thing came from.
The curly-haired rocket.
The curly-haired rocket, yeah.
No, I remember it very clearly. And a lot of the music I remember, heard it a million times.
Sure.
So yeah, this is fun. This is definitely a little walk down memory lane.
Oh yeah, yeah. I enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah. So with Schoolhouse Rock, it appropriately enough began with a kid who's having trouble memorizing his multiplication tables.
Right.
So you have the advertising executive named David McCall who's watching his son struggle with multiplication, and simultaneously he's thinking, like, this kid can rattle off music lyrics without a hitch.
Sure.
So why, if we set math to music, maybe he will have a better go at this.
Right.
Which sounds logical. I mean, if your kid can prattle off like every word from Tie a Yellow Ribbon or like Touch Me in the Morning or anything else from 1973, he should be able to remember that, 3 times 7 is 21.
I've seen, we've all seen studies that say that if you're good at music, you're probably good at math too, or vice versa, because the brain absorbs music and math the same way. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Not to me, but, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe that's why I wasn't good at music or math.
It's like looking at this kid like, every word to the rockin' pneumonia and the boogie woogie flu, but you can't do 2 times 6. Come on, kid.
Right. Let's put this together.
Well, so McCall would then take this idea and he'd shop it around, and eventually he sold it to ABC, which, as we talked, all our previous episodes talked about the FCC.
Yeah.
The ABC is very aware of potential changing regulations, and they see this prospect of this cartoon short that teaches kids something, and it's in line with their efforts to kind of get out ahead of these increasing FCC regulations, thinking like, okay, we've got to have more educational content with these cartoons we're showing. So they jumped all over it. They actually added, they liked it so much and it worked so well for them that they ended up adding other things like, remember Time for Timer? That weird yellow guy who's like pushing cheese on kids, like he's like someone's gonna break his thumbs if he doesn't make his quota.
Right. Yeah, that guy was kind of creepy.
Time for Timer.
Yeah.
So this was like the beginning of all those little things that would pop up. Nothing clearly was ever as popular as Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
But it would go from there. So ABC would bring in musician and composer Robert Doro. I believe it's Doro. I could have that wrong.
That's how I read it.
Yeah. But so he was brought in as the musical director, and he did at least the original slate of episodes.
Yep.
And then he would stay on with the series the rest of the way.
Yeah.
He sang lead for the first 11 episodes, all focused on multiplication. There are 2 episodes that would feature established jazz singer Grady Tate, and then one with Blossom Dearie, who had been a longtime jazz singer. And then Doro would also have the songwriting credits for the first series.
Right.
It debuted on ABC on January 6th, 1973 with the 3 is a magic number, which kind of has been one of the most
popular
endearing
ones. Yeah.
But and then it would kind of go every week from there with a new one, and then they just kind of ran in rotation. It was popular enough that they picked it up for a second season almost immediately, and actually they debuted that same year in the fall with a focus on grammar, like specifically nouns, verbs, adjectives, other parts of speech. So it was it was a hit from the get-go.
Very popular.
Yeah. So the grammar season would have 7 specific episodes to start with. They would actually end up 2 later, but and then Doro actually took a step back as like the lead performer, and it was really, you had Jack Shelton was introduced, who I think his voice is now synonymous with Schoolhouse Rock.
Yeah.
Lynn Ahrens, Ezra Mohawk, and then Blossom Dearie also returned for, she had to unpack her adjectives during season 2. And then both of the season's episodes then just would run in a loop, or just kind of run periodically every Saturday morning,
right,
through into 1975,
in between other shows. And
and so they end up, again, it's going so well, 3rd season, and at this point they're looking at it like, well, the bicentennial is coming up, we've done multiplication, we've done grammar, let's do history.
Right.
And so they shift
American history.
Yes, American history. They go to promote the country's history and then the government, the setup. And so on September 20th, 1975, season 3 debuts, and it's pretty much the same vocalist as season 2. It's all about the same. The only real notable addition for that season was Sue Manchester, who sang the lead for an episode called Elbow Room, and that's an episode that requires its own little discussion.
Later, yeah. I've got that on my list.
History is an interesting season.
Yeah.
It
was 70s Schoolhouse history.
Yes.
Yeah.
in a particularly interesting time.
Yes.
When other history is starting to be pushed to the forefront.
Right.
They kind of ignored it and stayed with what they were doing. But it kept going for season 4, and this time it's science. Mm-hmm. They talk about the human body, astronomy, electricity, things like that.
Electricity. I remember that.
And I forgot. Like, that's pretty much the whole song.
Yeah.
There's there's lines here and there, but it's
Benjamin Franklin was flying a kite and discovered electricity.
It is built on repeating that over and over.
And that's
over.
why I remember it now.
It is so catchy.
50 years later.
Season 5 then would push them into the 80s, and they have a very short 4-episode run called Scooter Computer and Mr. Chips, which is all about computers. But that one actually, they kind of be pulled fairly quickly. That's why they only did 4, because computers at that time, technology advanced so quickly that all these cartoons became obsolete by
the time they finished them, they were obsolete.
The animation was done. It's like, wow, this is kind of useless now. But they ran them and then they pulled them. But in fact, the entire series then would be off the air by 1985. It's not the end, however.
Right.
1993, 8 years later, 2 new grammar segments were created, the Busy Prepositions and the Tale of Mr. Morton. And they once again began airing in rotation with all the originals. So suddenly ABC is running
them all again.
Yeah, I mean, it seems random.
Right.
But anyway, then 2 years later, they came up with a completely new season. That's Money Rock.
Right.
Is what they called it. And so that aired with songs focused on money management, taxes, things like that.
Debt.
Yeah. And they were all added in with the other songs. So ABC's running these, they're comfortable with what they got. And then the Walt Disney Corporation steps in. Purchases, they acquire all of ABC.
Right.
And they decide they're going to completely redo Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
With 2 exceptions. The Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show.
Sure.
And Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock stays.
It's like, these things, we're not pulling these things.
These are great.
Kids love these. We're staying with them.
Yeah.
And at that point, then you've got a lot of nostalgia. They're 20 years on the air. And like, I'm sure that at this point, some of the people who are making the decisions at ABC or Disney are like, let's keep that.
Those are pretty good.
But so ultimately, it would stay there. And in 2000, it's finally pulled again.
Right.
Again, not the end of the story.
Right.
Things keep going, because in 2 years later, 2002, another new song, I'm Gonna Send Your Vote to College, is produced for the 30th anniversary VHS and DVD release. It was performed by Duro again, and then Jack Shelton. Yet again, it comes back. It's kind of floating around in VHS. And in 2008, there's another song called The Presidential Minute that debuted part of the 2008 DVD Schoolhouse Rock Election Collection. And that was all this existing things that centered on songs related to history and government. So a lot of like the history rock stuff, and then a couple other things mixed in. 2009, a whole new series comes out, and it's focused on climate change. But that was actually a standalone DVD release. It's never actually aired on television, on the airwaves. It was just kind of its own thing. And that's finally the actual end of the episodes being released. So up through 2009, new stuff is still kind of periodically coming out.
Yeah.
But it's not the end of the series' history. First, 1993, going back a little bit, there was a stage show that was created called Schoolhouse Rock Live, which debuted in Chicago. Live performances of various songs from the series. It would move off Broadway, back to Chicago at one point, and it's still actually performed by local theater companies and schools. The only other thing seems worth talking about are 2 tribute albums that came out in the 90s. Schoolhouse Rock Rocks,
right?
Which I know you were familiar with. You actually
shared
your
your
CD with
yeah.
me. And that was all. That was released in 1996 with all these proceeds going to the Children's Defense Fund. That was contemporary artists of the time. You have Moby, Pavement, Blind Melon, Better Than Ezra. And actually the Blind Melon component is interesting because I believe it was the last, if not one of the last in-studio performances by Shannon Hoon,
the
lead singer Blind Melon, before he unfortunately took his life. 2 years later, 1998, Schoolhouse Rocks the Vote was released, and that was a fundraiser for the Rock the Vote organization. That saw Isaac Hayes, Etta James, The Roots, and Joan Osborne doing covers. And then as well, there's appearances by the original Schoolhouse Rock performers, Duro, Mohawk, and Tate, all doing new songs. So it was... Yeah,
it's a lot of history.
There's a lot of stuff going on. But what's interesting is, talk about those performers. They're all significant. Their history is, we don't normally talk about voice actors. We're talking about the singers and the performers for this.
Right. Yeah, these were not voice actors. These were musicians, right? And songwriters. Mm-hmm. And some of them, they didn't go out and just get somebody, can you sing? These were legitimate jazz Grammy-nominated musicians. Duro, for example, pianist, composer, songwriter, arranger, producer, obviously known for his work with Schoolhouse Rock, but also worked with Miles Davis. Have you heard of him?
No.
Yeah, Miles Davis, Blossom Dearie, who appears in this. In 1974, received a Grammy nomination for his work on Schoolhouse Rock for Best Recording for Children. He was involved in almost every season here, either as a performer or a writer. He wrote all the songs for Multiplication Rock for 6 eventual subject areas, including grammar, American science, money, and Earth Rock. We also have Blossom Dearie, Grammy nomination for Best Recording for Children. And I heard her voice described one time as a preschooler voice with postgraduate lyrics, because she sounds like a child when she sings.
Yeah, this very childish voice, but and I've got multiple tracks of her in my collection, just of her
jazz,
singing standards, singing Cole Porter. She's outstanding.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, she did Unpack Your Adjectives. Yeah, and then Grady Tate, who is a recognizable baritone guy. I said baritone. And he appeared in I Got 6, the one about the number 6. And that was the first to feature an African-American child as the main character, which was cool. And all of these people had worked with, we always talk about the voice actors. Oh, did they work with so-and-so or they were on this? But these guys worked with all the greats of American jazz. Johnny Mercer, Miles Davis, Jack Segal, Johnny Mandel, Duncan Lamont, Bob Duro, obviously, Jay Berliner. Just some great jazz musicians here. They went out and got the all-stars, Also had a song by the Tokens. Yeah. And the Tokens did The Lion Sleeps Tonight. It's a huge song in America. Everyone knows that song. They were in Science Rock.
Yeah,
they
had about gravity.
Gravity, yeah. So they had real musicians in this. This wasn't just, let's find some voice actors who can sing. We got some jazz musicians and we're going to do this right. And it's super cool. because they're songs. You know, there's not a plot to this, essentially. I mean, each story has a little bit of a plot, but they're musical performances. They're songs. And then they drew the animation to match what was being said in the song. So yeah, from a voice actor standpoint, we're not talking about actors here. We had musicians. Jack Sheldon sang on Conjunction Junction. He was the voice of Louie the Lightning Bug, that electric safety PSAs. Remember Louie the Lightning Bug? He looked like a light bulb with wings.
Yep.
Yeah, that was Jack Sheldon, and he sang in some of these.
I think originally he was with the Merv Griffin show, too. I think he was a performer in the band.
You're right.
On Merv Griffin.
Yep, he was with Merv Griffin. These guys just... I can't say enough about how good these guys were.
And how they just... Like, their performances fit the subject matter, too. Like, when you talk about, like, the history... And you haven't mentioned her yet, but Ezra Mohawk, the way she sells suffering for till suffrage, I mean, that's just,
I know.
She knocks it out of the park.
And it's funny because you expect, like, okay, this is an educational song, it's going to be corny.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, some of these songs, as a kid say, they slap. You know, Conjunction Junction, what's your function? You know, if you saw Saturday morning cartoons, you know the words to that song. You know, and it comes on, you know it. You listen to it. It's in your brain. If you ever saw it once, it's there. I can't say conjunction without saying Conjunction Junction. And the verb, what's happening, you know, with the black superhero, which was super cool and very edgy for this time.
It's a very distinct vibe.
Yeah.
That kind of sets it apart from the other ones.
And another one I want to mention is Lynn Aherns. She sang A Noun is a Person, Place, or Thing. She was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, 2 Golden Globes, and several Tony Awards and Emmys. So if there was an EGOT for being nominated for things, she was nominated for all the EGOT or Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tonys. So just an incredible musician and writer. She also wrote Seussical. She wrote the book and the lyrics for Seussical.
Oh, wow.
So she went on to really big things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'd be fun because just to go through season by season instead of just talking about our favorite episodes, let's break it down. Season 1, what are your favorites? And then we'll go on season 2, 3, 4, etc. Because there's just so many cool things in here to talk about, and I wouldn't want to jump around,
right?
You know, so
it doesn't make sense to do that. Just stick with the multiplication.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are your highlights from multiplication?
Well, it's funny to me, like 11 episodes, but they use 12 numbers, right? And they start with number 3. And 3 is a magic number, and then My Hero 0. And then Elementary, My Dear, is about the number 2. Yeah. And then The Four-Legged Zoo, Ready or Not, Here I Come, is about number 5. I Got 6, obviously about number 6. That's the one with Grady Tate. He played with Quincy Jones. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, he was the drummer for Quincy Jones.
Awesome.
He also performed with Simon and Garfunkel, but not just with Simon and Garfunkel. He performed with Simon and Garfunkel at the concert in Central Park.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So it's not like he just was a backup musician for them.
Yeah,
it's
I know.
One of the most important concerts in American music history. He was there, and then he's on this cartoon. Lucky 7, Samson, about number 7. Figure 8, that was Blossom Dearie. Naughty number 9, and then The Good 11. I'm like, wait a minute, there's no number 10. Why did they go from 9 to 11? Well, My Hero 0 is actually about the power of 10.
Yeah.
And then the little 12itos, which was great. But my
that
favorite...
was weird.
Yeah, it's weird, but that's what makes it great. It's like, how do we sing a song about 12 and not just talk about a dozen eggs? You know? But I loved 3 as a magic number. Still one of my favorites. Just in the Blind Melon version is great, too. And then My Hero 0 was, just cracked me up.
I remember as a kid, I could remember my multiplication table, especially... No, I mean 2 was easy anyway, but 3 and 4, 5, and I mean especially and 8 because of the way that they present them. It's just like it's really kind of quick and rapid succession.
Yep.
You know, it's like 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18.
Yep.
But then you have like the 8 is very 1 times 8 is 8, 2 times 8 is 16, and it just kind of runs through. And so and it's you hear that song in your head. Like when you get into like 7, 7, it's a little. They try to put more of a story behind it, like this lucky rabbit.
It's a little clunky.
And so it takes a while to get to the numbers, and then they start doing like the new math. And like, 7 times 10, 7, sometimes times 70, and then you get to 11. It's not just 7 times 11 is 77. It's 7 times 10 plus 7 plus 1. 7 times 1 is, 70. Like, why?
Why'd you do that?
Yeah. Like, and they start, and it's just, breaking it out like that. I'm like, that's not necessary.
No.
Like, this is the multiplication table. Just like,
it was the 70s. We don't need the new math yet. We're still using slide rules or something.
And they do a little bit of that in figure 8. Like, and they like usually call it like it's a chance to work on your new math tricks. I'm like, no, it's not.
There's no tricks to math.
Just give me the numbers.
That'll get you in trouble. You start doing tricky math.
But I remember specifically as a kid, 3 and 4 were the ones that I loved. I love the four-legged zoo.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
right.
That one just stuck in my head. I did love that Naughty Number 9. It's a good song. It's not one that
it had Grady Tate's voice.
It's not one that I particularly loved or hated or anything. It was just kind of there, but
maybe it was the music in that one you liked.
Yeah, but I think researching it was he's like smoking a cigar.
Yeah,
and ABC said no, we can't do that. We can't show somebody smoking, and they came back. It's like, well, you're not supposed to show live action people smoking in kids, but it doesn't say anything about animation. And so they went back and forth and decided, okay, well, let's go with it because the cat in this is a villain because he's like shooting pool.
He's the bad guy.
And he's like hitting mice with the pool balls,
which is kind of funny. Actually.
Yeah, so and kids aren't going to mimic a villain,
the bad guy. Yeah.
So they're just going to see him as bad, and smoking is going to be bad.
Smoking's bad.
They'll just go with that. So they never pulled it. They ran it.
Yeah. Never became an issue.
Standards and practices bent.
Right.
And said, okay, let's do it.
You got a cigar smoking cat using mice as pool balls.
But I do love it. It's like this Minnesota Fats
yes, exactly.
Playing pool.
I love it. Anytime you can emulate Minnesota Fats. Unique.
But Little 12 Toes I always thought was weird because like the whole premise of it is like, well, what if aliens had 12 fingers and toes instead of 10? Everything would be based around the number 12 as opposed to 10. Like it took me a while to wrap my head around that too. Like, what?
Probably, I don't know. Is that true? I think the Romans would have figured that out. Yeah. 10's easier than 12. But then what would the metric system look like if it was based on 12? Because we use the dumb imperial system. The metric system is 10s. You know? Would it be 12s then?
Yeah.
They didn't go that far.
Yeah,
maybe that's in the remake that's going to come out.
My brain.
Sorry, I broke Robert.
But I mean, really, there are no clunkers in this season. I mean, they're all good. Fun. I mean, there's some that really stand out, but they're all good.
And they're all 3 to 4 minutes long, so you can watch all of them in an hour.
Yeah,
easily in under an hour.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely entertaining.
Let's see, 3 times 10. It's great nostalgia.
Yeah.
When I watch these back. When we do these, I don't watch every episode. This one I watched every episode because you just turn them on and you watch all of them.
Yeah,
it's great.
What's the next one? What's the next one? I remember that one.
I remember this one. Yeah. Oh, I remember that.
I can sing along to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. People are looking at you like, why are you singing? You remember that? Of course I do.
Well, season 2 is grammar.
Yeah.
What were the highlights for you in grammar?
Grammar was my second favorite season.
Mm-hmm.
The American history, because I'm an armchair historian, was my favorite. But Grammar Rock, some of these songs are just amazing. And Noun is a Person, Place, or Thing, by Lynn Ahrens was great. Verb, It's What's Happening, has the superhero also. Conjunction Junction is my favorite. With the train and the locking up, and performed by Jack Sheldon. I like his voice. He's also the voice of Bill, and I'm just the Bill.
Yeah.
So I just love his voice, and I love that song. And in fact, the Conjunction Junction music was used in a Burlington Northwestern commercial about their trains.
Oh,
yeah. So it was picked up by them. And interjections, I didn't know this, but the interjections, the chorus quotes the Hallelujah chorus from Handel's Messiah. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty deep. Unpack your adjectives. The woman going camping with her pet turtle. It's kind of fun to watch.
Boy, that's one big ugly bear.
They're describing, that's a big, ugly, scary bear. And The Tale of Mr. Morton is a great one, too, because you almost feel sympathetic for Mr. Morton because he's going through all this stuff.
He's a sad sack.
Yeah.
He's kind of cowardly and just whining.
Mr. Morton walks.
Yeah, he's just pining for the neighbor lady.
Just to pay attention to him. Yeah. So, but I liked it. But he was a sympathetic character. But, Conjunction Junction, Unpack Your Adjectives, and The Tale of Mr. Morton were my favorites in this one. They're all great, but those 3 really stick out to me. And then when I learned that Lynn Ahearns also wrote Seussical. I'm like, whoa, that woman's talented. You know, she just didn't do this little thing. She had a lot going on.
Yeah, no, the Conjunction Junction, I think it's just for everybody. That's the one everybody remembers from this season. That's the standout.
Right.
To me, the one that I loved, to the point that I actually owned a T-shirt.
Oh, really?
That said, lolly, 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 get your adverbs here. With like the characters and everything.
Yeah,
when I was
cool.
in college. I loved it.
Yeah.
So that one, I mean, and I love this season. I have a love for this because of like my writing background.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff just kind of, you can eat it up.
Me too, yeah.
But yeah, so
Lolly,
lolly,
lolly.
lolly.
Was that the one with they had like a convenience store where they were selling the...
It's like these 3 generations of people named Lolly.
Right.
With their store, and they're selling adverbs.
Uh-huh.
and it's all like a big commercial.
Oh, I wish I could make money selling adverbs. That'd be great.
Unpack Your Adjectives was another one that I loved.
That little girl's backpack was 3 times as big as her.
It's the size of the big ugly bear.
Big scary bear, yeah.
So yeah, those are the 3 that and interjections actually. Going back and watching it this time, like that one's really kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of...
They're holding up the signs. Hey, stop. Yeah.
Yeah. Yay, I'm for the other team.
Yay. Right.
The little nerd kind of opens up after an interception.
And then he gets swallowed up by the home crowd.
And then they get the kid who gets the shot in his backside. And
yeah.
He's like,
hey, that hurt.
So, no, I mean, this is a really good one. The busy prepositions is ultimately kind of the...
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a fill-in. We got to do something about prepositions.
And it feels older. It feels like more recent than the other ones. It feels like it was a later edition.
Might have, yeah.
Where the Mr. Morton one actually felt like very in line with... I mean,
with
I
the
wouldn't
rest
have
of
known until researching that it was a later one.
Yeah.
I mean, the animation was a little crisper.
Sure.
But still, I mean, it just fit. And like it could have been something that they possibly they cleaned it up. But no, it really was, almost 20 years later. But
so what'd you like in America Rock?
What did I like? The shot heard around the world is
the start of the revolution.
Well, talk about how better could you concisely describe the Revolutionary War in 3 minutes?
In 3 minutes.
I mean,
via song.
It covers everything. And does it very well.
Yeah.
I mean, it
shows the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah.
Shows Bunker Hill. It shows the Boston Massacre. You know, it's just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it covers everything. It's just so entertaining. I'm Just a Bill, which everybody knows.
Everyone knows that.
And then I also love Suffer Until Suffrage.
Yep.
I do want to point out, though, so I live with a woman who is very well versed in the history of the suffrage movement, and particularly of Susan B. Anthony.
Because she's a professional museum geek.
Yes. Yeah. She's actually given speeches on the women's suffrage movement. And at one point in this episode, they specifically referenced Susan B. Anthony. And they mean that it's like, all these different like significant people throughout the suffrage movement, but they mention her, and there's an image that accompanies her. And my wife is watching it, and she's like, "That's not Susan B. Anthony." And like, she's like, "They got that picture wrong." And when you look at it, you realize there's no way it's Susan B. Anthony, because Susan B. Anthony has this very square jaw, very distinct jawline, and a very distinct nose. And this picture that they show, this woman has neither. There's other people who actually reference that image as being Susan B. Anthony. And
really?
So, and they're wrong.
Yeah,
it's just, I mean, my wife actually at one time...
No one had a silver dollar to check it out?
Like, actually was the collections manager at Susan B. Anthony. At the Susan B. Anthony house in Rochester,
so she would know.
Well aware,
if anyone knows,
So she's like, "That's not a thing." But everything else, she's like, "Everything else is actually."
We
really
should have had her
done.
on as a guest to talk about that.
She would have said no.
Who? No.
But this is, but other than that, I mean, it's so well done. It's like, I mean, I never would have known it without her pointing it out. But it's fantastic. It's imperfect. The very first one, the
No More Kings.
No More Kings. I've always had a soft spot for that one.
Yeah.
It's imperfect history, but I do like it.
Yeah. Well, and there's one in here that we'll need to talk about.
There's 2 in here that we need to talk about.
Okay, 2. I love the shot heard around the world because I'm an armchair American history buff, and I love that the pre-revolution, revolution era. The I'm Just a Bill is great. Explains how a bill becomes a law very simply, and this Bill character is just great, and you cheer for him at the end because he became a law. Spoiler alert. And Mother Necessity about inventions. But the one that rang true to me and was prophetic by them was the 3-ring government. where they introduced the branches of the United States government and its concept of separation of powers using a three-ring circus as a model. It's not really a model, it's the truth. I mean, there's no better way to describe the three-ring circus of our government.
It's like the current government officials looked at it and like, we should do it that way.
Exactly.
That's how they meant it. They all grew up on Schoolhouse Rock. Like, oh, it's supposed to be a circus.
Supposed to be like this. Yeah, it's supposed to be a circus. Yeah. But, the Shot Heard Around the World is my favorite out of the whole, the whole program.
Yes.
The whole Schoolhouse Rock series. That's just my favorite one.
I would be remiss without coming back and mentioning Fireworks. Fireworks and Grady Tate.
The Declaration of Independence.
Does a great job with that one.
Yeah.
And actually this last year, so, we watched this, and then on the 4th of July, my youngest said, Dad, we have to watch that.
Oh, cool.
So we actually had to watch just Fireworks.
Yeah.
Just that one track.
Sure. The new Independence Day tradition for you.
Yeah.
I love it. So we're going to talk about Elbow Room. So Elbow Room was about westward expansion, and isn't it wonderful? We need more room, so we're going to take over the rest of the continent, and we're going to buy land that it's really about manifest destiny and moving the Native Americans out of the way so we can expand in a cheerful way.
Yeah. And even like, hey, they hired Sacagawea. Like they
didn't hire her.
Yeah. they actually hired her husband.
Right.
And then he proved to be an idiot, and she was actually like,
she was the brains of the operation. Yeah. Well, and they animate her standing on the bow of the boat like she's leading them through. No, she was working for them.
Yeah. 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 The whole manifest destiny element at this point is.
We know better now. Yeah. But this is what we were taught in the 70s.
Yeah. And that's just expansion. We just found all this land, and suddenly now this whole continent is ours. Like, it didn't happen that way.
No. It was,
it glosses over a very ugly.
There was some genocide involved. And there wasn't a lot of talk about that.
Right. Yeah.
But it was. Yeah, that one was a little, watching it now as a grown-up, I was like, ooh, that was cringy. Like, they shouldn't have done that.
And along the same lines, the other one that is cringy is the Great American Melting Pot.
Yeah.
It's the whole idea of the cultural assimilation and like, hey, everybody comes in and we all get along. And I mean, I think
we're all Americans
and
now.
we know that. I mean, we see it clearly now. It has never been quite that smooth.
No.
And there are, people from, all over who've come here, and it has not gone well.
No.
I mean, and it's not
an experiment.
It's not to be like, again, it's the experiment that, the ideal is this great American melting pot.
Sure.
And so that's what they promoted. Like, hey, this is the ideal, but the reality, unfortunately, is not
the ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where it might work here or there, it doesn't work in other places.
And that one in particular was when everyone's jumping into it looked like a frying pan that they were all jumping into. It was the melting pot. But I'm like, oh, that makes sense. They're jumping into the frying pan.
Getting cooked.
But there was like the same character jumping on the handle of the frying pan and into the water. Mm-hmm. Same animation. It was just on a loop.
Yeah, it's
for
the same,
almost 30 seconds.
2 to 3 second piece of animation. They just kept looping it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, this is getting old. I got to get away from that. I don't like this idea for one. And it's just, okay, let's move on to let's go on to Elbow Room. No, that's not any better. Because those go back to back. That's episode 6 and episode 7.
Yeah, episode 6 and 7. Yeah, they go from the... Yeah.
So enough said on that.
But for the most part, to be fair, for the most part, I mean, and there are again,
there are 12 episodes,
and there are quibbles with the No More Kings, where they talk about some of they gloss over some of the uglier parts of pilgrims coming here, and like the taxation was without representation,
right?
I mean, but to be fair, to tell all that information to this target audience, which is like 8 to 10-year-old kids, they're not going to understand.
No,
that's over their head, and they're like, I don't understand.
They're not going to understand. They taxed us so they could continue fighting the French in Canada.
Yes. So let's simplify that and move that on.
Yep.
So we can get to the Shot Heard Around the World, and,
which was awesome.
Make everybody celebrate. So.
Right. Science Rock. Yeah, Science Rock, A Victim of Gravity, performed by the Tokens, was awesome. Mm-hmm. I love that song. I was listening to it in the car today. Just like, oh, I've got to dial that up. And then Interplanet Janet. Mm-hmm. I loved because I'm a space geek. But when I'm watching it now, it's like I read that when they released Interplanet Janet, within 3 months of its airing, it was obsolete because they mentioned Pluto as being the 9th and furthest planet from the sun. But on February 7th, 1979, Pluto's orbit came closer to the sun than Neptune. So then it was really the eighth planet. And now it's not even a planet at all. Moved further out, and it was called a minor body or minor celestial body or whatever. So there's all this. I want a shirt that says "Save Pluto," because I think it's ridiculous. It's the ninth planet. But yeah, it's funny that now as an adult I'm looking at it that way. Like, wait a minute, is Pluto? No, that's the wrong order. Like it was weird. But Interplanet Janet is a rocket that has a humanoid. It's an anthropomorphic rocket, and she's got big bushy hair like a cloud, like a space cloud or something, and there's some stars floating around her. But Interplanet Janet was cool.
Oh, I loved Interplanet
Janet. Yeah, she just zips around the universe. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's of all
go ahead.
Of all the science ones, that's the one that has stuck in my head the most over time.
Yeah.
Electricity, of course, but Interplanet Janet more, surprisingly.
So now that I watched it, when she gets this autograph from the sun, I'm like, well, of course the sun's a big star.
Yeah.
And you get autographs from big stars. I'd never put that together before.
Yeah.
He or she or they is a star. I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense now. Like, I can't believe I never caught that before.
Yeah. It never dawned on me until I watched it back on this. And watching it again too. The one thing I immediately remembered as I'm watching it is like she's like sitting looking through like a telescope. Yeah, like at other planets, like there's never been a planet Janet hasn't seen, and you see like it's like this moon, and it turns around, the face is there, and he says, "Hi, Janet."
Yeah, just like they're all pals.
Yeah. But she's not going to visit him. She's just going to look at him, like keeping distance from that dude. He's a little gaseous.
I love that. Hi, Janet. Yeah. And Energy Blues with Jack Sheldon. Energy, I think we're running out of. They have this. He explains energy and how energy is generated, and as the superhero from the adverb thing, cranking the. Yeah. If we had a big superhero could crank the generator around forever, then we'd have all the electricity we need. But we got to use water and wind and everything else. Right. But I'm like, oh, it's like a cameo.
Yeah. Like we've got our superhero.
We've got a superhero. Let's do it. But yeah, that one's great because he's a real baritone voice, and it was true in 1970s and true now. We're still facing the same problems.
Yeah.
But if we just had that superhero, could just sit there and spin that thing, it'd be perfect.
Just got to get more verbs.
There you go. And then The Greatest Show on Earth. You want to tell us about that one? That has an interesting little history to it.
Well, and so it originally entitled The Greatest Show on Earth, and then it got pulled. In about 1987, because Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus looked at it and said, yeah, you're using our tagline, so we're going to sue you for copyright infringement.
Right.
Basically trademark, I should say. It was like they had a trademark on it. So it was pulled.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to air again. They actually pulled it from any pending VHS releases. Eventually, so it was mostly through the 90s. Eventually, like DVD, they put out the whole series and included it as a Lost episode.
Yeah.
And just changed the name to The Weather Song.
The Weather Song.
So then they could use it. So now, like, if you look at it on Disney Plus, it's there, and it's just called The Weather Song. It's not called The Greatest Show on Earth. The Greatest Show on Earth,
yeah.
But I watching that one again, I just thought it was funny because it's that, and then we'll get to the other one where it's kind of like this carnival barker, and he's talking about the weather, and then he's got these three women who come running on, and they're just like long-legged, and they're like in swimsuits. Like it's just like, like, do you need eye candy on Schoolhouse Rock? It's
to
a little weird.
Weather.
It's a little creepy, but yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I loved electricity. Electricity, to get it right. Yeah. It's two words.
Two words.
I did like Interplanet Janet we've talked about. Mm-hmm. And then also I liked them Not So Dry Bones. Again,
with the dancing skeleton.
Jack Sheldon does such a good job with that one too. And it's kind of using that existing song, that Dem Bones, and then they kind of like put a twist on it with like a male quartet singing it.
Sure.
It
can almost be their Halloween episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, with the skeletons.
Yeah, like this little kid skeleton just kind of walking around.
The jaws bouncing up and down.
No, those are, I mean, again, some really good ones. There's really no clunkers. Or
there's no dogs in that science rock one. They're great.
So we
Dude, the circulation was like a song, like a dance instruction thing. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, no, some really good stuff. And then we get into season 5. And
Season 5, Computer Rock, which the animation changed a little bit on season 5.
Yeah, they dealt it almost like as its own thing.
Yeah, because the character, the Scooter Computer, looked more like a boy than the previous drawings of people that they've had in these, because he was proportionally correct. The other ones weren't at all. Like in Unpack Your Adjectives, that woman's shoes were as big as her whole body, and she had no legs. She just had big shoes, But this guy was riding around on a skateboard, and he had a baseball cap on backwards, and he looked more like a boy.
You could relate to the kids a little bit more.
A little more, yeah.
He's talking about real things like computers.
Right.
Not ridiculous stuff like the preamble.
Right. And the computer had the monochrome screen, which is perfect for the early 80s,
Yeah.
And Mr. Chips was the computer.
Yeah.
And he rolled around on wheels too, I'm only as smart as the people who program me. But it was kind of prophetic. I'm watching that from the 80s, and they kind of lean towards the difference between a person and a machine. And now we've got AI, and we're dealing with that now. What is a person and what is a machine,
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting that like 30 years later, it's still makes sense kind of if you look at it that way. Then they have the episodes on hardware, software, and then the number cruncher. Those are ones I watched. I'm like, okay, I get it. They didn't really catch me. The songs weren't that great. It was more, there was a lot more conversation in those and a lot more monologue stuff that I didn't.
It felt more like something you'd watch in a classroom.
Yeah.
Like just like, oh yeah, like those mini film strips or something like that.
Sure.
Like it's a lot more talking, less
songs,
less entertainment.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, it wasn't that good.
And
it's forgettable.
Yeah, and it didn't last long. So
yeah.
Then we get into Money Rock, which is season 6. That was the 1990 kind of revival of it, if you will. For me, every single one of these was kind of forgettable.
Yep.
The one that jumps out at me is we just talked about with the weather song. The Taxman Max.
Yeah.
Is again, he's more like a vaudeville guy.
Yeah.
And again, he's got 3 scantily clad women running around singing with him. Like,
right.
Why?
Why do we
is
need
this a
this?
thing?
Yeah. I wonder if the animator was the same person who did the weather show,
You know what? I love that weather one.
I love this weather one. I'm going to put these babes in a different one, too.
Like, who's the creep that did that one? Bring him back for Taxman Max.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it had the vaudeville guy just like the weather show guy. So it was almost like a remake of Weather Show. Yeah, I was with you too. I'm like, whoa, where did they come from? Is this the Pitbull concert or is this Money Rock? And the Tyrannosaurus debt, that I wanted to mention that one because they have this big red, white, and blue Tyrannosaurus Rex over the Capitol is eating all the money, and it does a good job of explaining debt and how it started to pay for the Revolutionary War and just has grown from there. But at the very end, if you catch it, the Tyrannosaurus Rex is trying to eat everything. And his shadow comes over the Bill sitting on the steps of the Capitol, and he gets up and runs away. And I'm like, oh my God, that was the Bill from I'm Just a Bill. He's still sitting there. But it was just fun to see that cameo from way back in season 2, show up in this. So he didn't have any lines. He just had a quick little cameo, but it was fun to see that.
I'll confess, the 12 episodes that went with Earth Rock.
Earth Rock?
I didn't watch a single one of them. Those are not, I think those were, I believe, because they were direct to video, they're only available on YouTube right now.
Yep.
So I did not take the time to go and research those. After the Money Rock, I'm like,
you had enough.
We're good.
I did a little work on season 7 Earth Rock because when I was researching the singers, I came across the name Eric Weisberg. Mm-hmm. He was on the Trash Can Band episode 3, the Trash Can Band. He's not known for this, but what he is known for is his most popular work, Dueling Banjos. Oh. He's the guy who did Dueling Banjos.
Interesting.
And then episode 2, The Little Things We Do, was all about, turn off lights and save electricity and save recycle and do. It was they brought back Mr. Morton, and it was Mr. Morton and his family with all the little things they could do. So it turns out Mr. Morton hooked up with the neighbor lady and had a family.
Yeah, well, that's how the Mr. Morton one.
How it
ends.
ends.
They run off on the bus. It's like the end of The Graduate.
Yeah, just exactly. So now he's got a little family, and they brought Mr. Morton back. So I thought that was really cool. And then I had to watch "Don't Be a Carbon Sasquatch" just because I think Bigfoot is funny. But it was like all about don't be a huge consumer, big consumer of carbon. Don't be a Sasquatch about it. But I didn't watch all of them in season 7 because I was over it.
Yeah.
But those 3 things, the dueling banjos guy, Mr. Morton has a family, and then the Sasquatch thing, I thought were good.
Well, I may have to go back and watch the little things we do because I gotta check out how
see how Mr. Morton's doing.
See how Morton and Pearl get along here.
Yep. So yeah, this was super fun. I'm glad we decided to do this one because it really was a trip down memory lane. Because some of the episodes we've done, I had never seen the cartoon before. Like Gem, I never watched any of that. But to go back and watch it, I didn't have that memory to go on. But this one, I definitely had memory to go on.
Yeah.
And singing these songs and seeing the T-shirts and all they actually did merchandise with these. I don't know if it was during the show or if they're nostalgic shirts, but you still see people wearing them.
Yeah.
It's really retro now.
Yeah, you still see the bill. And even like, especially the I'm Just a Bill has been referenced so many times in pop culture.
Sure.
The best one, as always, is The Simpsons with their the amendment to be.
Yes.
He wants to make it legal for the police to beat on hippies.
Yes. Oh, God, that's great. Yeah, he's definitely ensconced in pop culture.
Yeah.
For sure, the Bill. We should try to get Mr. Morton in pop culture somehow.
There should be more Mr. Morton.
There should be more Mr. Morton in your world. For sure.
I'm kind of curious how long Lolly's stayed open.
Yeah. Did they fall victim to the COVID clothings,
People just aren't using adverbs like they used to anymore.
Right. It's a darn shame. What kind of shame? A darn shame. Sounds more fun than just it's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, kind of looking at it, what's the good for you?
For the good for me is that the music is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The lyrics are awesome. And the education was good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like we explained, like to explain the American Revolution in 3 minutes, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And they did it really well. I loved that. The songs, the music, and the education was top.
And the performances too on top of it. They're just so good. And I mean, you can't imagine these songs being performed by other people or differently than they were. Right. I mean, it's just between the performance and obviously the music direction by Duro throughout was just on the nose
and consistent forever. You know, throughout all of it, except for the computer one. Pretty consistent. Yeah.
How about your bad?
The bad, even for the 70s, I thought the animation was kind of lazy in parts where they were just like line drawings on a monochrome background in a lot of them. Like, But they kept that style. So that was the style they were going for. But it was like, I had to come to grips with this is more about the song and the education than it is the animation. Mm-hmm. The animation is just a way to get it on TV. Right. But I was a little disappointed in it. I mean, so if I had to find a bad... I guess I'm not saying that it's bad animation. I just didn't like it.
Yeah, and in some cases, it's overly simple.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's just like, they've mailed that in.
Yeah. And for me, for the bad, I'll go with that. And I'd also say that, like I said, money's forgettable to me. Like that whole season.
That whole season, like,
it doesn't need to exist in my world.
Right.
I'm good without it. But I really couldn't find a lot of bad, though.
Yeah.
I mean, even the money it being forgettable, it's not terrible.
Yeah,
it's just not good enough. It's not up to par to everything else that
we've seen.
Out.
Yeah.
And then how about your ugly?
The ugly, the waxing over the genocide in Elbow Room. That was ugly. Yeah. Even for 1976, that was ugly. I mean, come on. Yeah. Yeah, there had to be a better way to explain that, or just not do it.
Right. I mean,
just skip it.
Yeah, Elbow Room and Great American Melting Pot are the two that just like,
yeah,
they're just.
Well, what's next? Are they going to do one in the Civil War? How would have that gone over?
Well, and like I said, the timing of that in the 70s, that's where you start to see a lot of this additional. It's not just like the same basic history. It's like more
there was more information on
more perspectives and more. People are realizing that history is not just this one track. There's all these other perspectives and experiences, and that.
Yeah,
kind of
there
just
are other
ignore-
stories
yeah,
here.
At a time, they kind of, to a point, I get it. They, know your audience. Your audience is not,
Mhm.
college educated, looking for some discourse on,
Right.
on our history. It's more like, hey, this is
This is
really quick. This is what happened. So if you have a test on it, you might remember something.
You might remember Jefferson and Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea, and the Louisiana Purchase. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we're sitting here in Iowa, part of the Louisiana Purchase, so.
Yeah. But 50 years
that.
later, it looks, it looks really bad.
Yeah, through a 50-year lens, it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your scale of 0 to 10.
0 to 10, I give it a 9, just
Yeah.
because I loved it. I had to knock it down a little bit for the animation and a little bit for the ugliness of the waxing over that elbow room thing. So, yeah, I'm at a solid 9, and on the upper side of 9.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. I think it holds up. I think kids watch it today would still get it and would still learn something from it. So that says a lot for 50 years ago.
Yeah.
To be able to teach these lessons in 3 to 4 minutes. It's still pretty cool to me.
No, I'm right with you. 9 is where I came in, just because and it's the strength of those first 4 seasons alone.
Yeah,
you can't really knock them down that much.
Right.
Anything else is just. You realize that it was 20 years later when they added money, and then even more when they added the other one. So they're kind of like, hey, great, let's add these here too. But when you really look at the first 4 seasons, there's really, like I said, there's Too Ugly.
Yeah.
And for that time
How
and
did that
everything,
all the things that could have done wrong, or subjects that could have touched. And, yeah.
And they hold up. Even now, like I think they're it's still catchy. It's still really entertaining, and
And your kids love it.
Yeah,
today.
my youngest still. Yeah, she still. We watched her, sat through all of them, and like I said, she recalled the fireworks that we have to watch that one again.
Perfect.
So she's in on it. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. I'm glad we did this, and to celebrate their 50th anniversary. Well done.
All right. So next time,
I think we should do the Flintstones.
I think you're right.
Meet the Flintstones.
I think it's time.
Yeah, it's time. They're a modern Stone Age family, and I've got a story to tell about that. My brother pointed out to me that they're a modern Stone Age family, and how much sense does that make? So, that'll be next time. We'll dive into the Flintstones.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I can't promise I'll watch all the episodes because there's a lot of them.
It's 5 seasons, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a bit.
Several episodes, but I've seen most of them.
Yeah.
If not all of them.
Yeah, so
it'll come back to me quickly.
Yeah.
So until next time. Well, I hear, Mom, I think it's time for us to go outside. So that means cartoon time is over. I'm John.
I'm Robert.
And this is Toon Talk.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you want more Toon Talk, you can find us on Twitter at Toon Talk Guys.
Or if you've got questions, comments, or suggestions, you can email us at toontalkguys@gmail.com.